Coming up next on Art Rocks, we'll introduce you to a novelist who finds great inspiration for her stories along the back roads of Louisiana.
My parents and 7 generations of both sides of my family are from the central Louisiana area. And so it was easy to know the place that I wanted to write about the most.
What do ballet stars do when they're in charge?
Just go with the flow, I think. Go whatever you guys feel.
We'll meet a musician who has taken Las Vegas by storm.
I'm the most alive when I'm creating. I think that's what keeps me going. I think music is the highest form of art.
And go inside an exhibit featuring various genres of toy art.
People love our collection because it's so approachable. You have tiny things, which are the miniatures, and then you have toys, which are things that you played with as a kid.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine, and this is Art Rocks. A novelist with deep roots in Louisiana is using her experiences here to create historical fiction that's gaining the attention of school children nationwide. We got a chance to spend some time with the author of My Louisiana Sky and other books when she visited a school in Gonzales, Louisiana.
I remembered something that happened to me in 4th grade. Your age, exactly your age. And I was in the car with my mom, and we were going down this road. This road leads to my grandmother's house, so this is in Forest Hill, Louisiana. There was a lady walking on the side of the road, and she looked different to me. And my mom told me that she was mentally challenged.
Kimberly Willis Holt told students at Central Primary School that her novel, My Louisiana Sky, is loosely based on that mentally challenged couple. She says other books are also based on people and places here.
My parents and 7 generations of both sides of my family are from the central Louisiana area. And so it was easy to know the place that I wanted to write about the most. My parents always made their stories of their childhood come alive for me. My parents didn't know how to say anything simple, neither did my grandparents. They always had a story with it.
Holt grew up in a military family that relocated often because of her father's job. She says the only place she really felt at home was the rural community of Forest Hill. She says readers can get a sense of her own grandmother while reading about Tiger's grandmother in My Louisiana Sky.
When I was little, my dad, brought me over to my grandmother and said, "Mama, isn't she beautiful?" And my grandmother looked at me and she said, "Son, she ain't purty, but she sure is sweet." And the grandmother in the story of My Louisiana Sky would say something like that, because Tiger wants to know, "Am I pretty?" And she says, "No, Tiger, you're not, but you're smart, and that's a whole lot better." My clothesline in the story was my grandmother's clothesline. The oak tree that Tiger loved that had a tire swing hanging from it, this one did too. That's in front of my grandmother's house. I put it in the book. The creek down the road that I used to swim in when I'd visit my grandmother, that was a special place to me. It's in that story too. Tiger Ann has a special swimming hole. Have you ever heard that term? Swimming hole? That was hers. And then the plant nursery that my dad worked at growing up. So when you read that story, you're going to hear about Tiger's father working at a plant nursery.
Just as you could juxtapose Seder in My Louisiana Sky to the real Forest Hill, Holt says you can see similarities to places she's lived and visited in her other books and short stories.
Mr. and Me, which is set in the sawmill town Longleaf, which is next to Forest Hill. 2 of my great-grandfathers worked in that sawmill town. Part of Me, which is really like short stories that have formed a novel, and it takes place all over Louisiana in special places that have meant something to me. So Forest Hill is part of it, Homa, Algiers Point, and then also the newest one, which is Dear Hank Williams, and that takes place in Forest Hill, but I call it Roaring Springs. I change the name often because it gives me a lot of freedom.
The author urged students to learn to write based on what they see, hear, feel, smell, and taste each day.
Today, when you're going home from school, notice something that you have never noticed before. And I guarantee you, you will see something every single day if you just know how to look. And just start saying, what if, what if? But also go back to your well, all the things and places that have happened to you.
Strong senses of family, morality, and acceptance are threads that are consistent in Holt's work. She says it isn't deliberate, but she recognizes them once her works are complete. It is perhaps those traits that helped land Holt's books on lists of required reading in many schools.
When Zachary Beaver Came to Town, my third book is about a sideshow boy, a boy that's billed as the fattest boy in the world. And these boys become friends with him. It's really a story of friendship and, again, of acceptance. In my book, Dear Hank Williams, I think it's an acceptance of what has happened in her life. There's a girl named Tate, and some really tough things have happened to her, and she's not honest with herself about them. And once she is, she's able to do it like an optimist, because she's an optimist, tackles it. And she tackles it, you know, and gets on with her life.
The themes that grab you throughout the story are themes that children experience in their own lives. When the characters have to determine who their true friends are in the story, I think kids can identify with that.
I really love that she makes something so real to everyone, so universal at the same time, and that we all can recognize it through her work.
Even young students appreciate the way Holt develops characters that they can identify with, as with Tate in Dear Hank Williams.
I like how Kimberly Willis Holt put it in like letters, and how she had a pen pal with Hank Williams, and how she got to write to him.
And Tiger in My Louisiana Sky.
She likes sports. She plays baseball. She really likes to go swimming, which is something I really like to do.
Her books is always great, and they inspiring, and I just love them.
You can learn more about Kimberly and the books she has written by visiting KimberlyWillisHolt.com. Reading is always rewarding. It can also be a lot of fun to go out and enjoy the performing and visual arts. Here's a look at this week's calendar of what's going on in the arts across our state. You can learn more about what's happening in Louisiana's art community by visiting lpb.org/artrocks. You can also follow the arts by grabbing a copy of Country Roads magazine. Now travelling up to Boston, where principal ballet dancer Jeffrey Cirio has created what's essentially a salon for his fellow dancers. It's a place where they have the freedom to create, to push themselves, and when there were no restrictions. He's calling it the Cirio Collective. So let's take a look.
I just hope that I'm doing my own thing and doing it well to the max.
In just 6 years on Boston Ballet's stage, most of them as a principal dancer, Jeffrey Cirio has become a force, owning the stage with rarefied skill. And in a bit of genetic bonanza, much the same can be said for his equally exquisite sister, Leah.
We really need to remember that as dancers, that we started doing this because it was something freeing, and we have to go back to that.
The siblings Cirio were born to dance. She when she first saw the Nutcracker at age 3, and he when he saw his older sister perform. Their lives have been intertwined ever since.
I don't think we've ever
been
jealous of each other. Sometimes he acts more like my older brother. Now that we're in our 20s, I feel like sometimes he's like, I don't know, the boss of me. I don't know. It's just a weird dynamic, and it's funny. I feel like we're equals now, where we are.
Where they are is distilling dance down to the joy of it. The pair have formed the Cirio Collective, rallying a group of friends to create and perform during their dance downtime.
I sort of just want to guide it and not be that person where we say, hey, this is the only way to do it. And I think we're very open. Just go with the flow, I think. Go whatever you guys feel.
The collective is all about the collaboration, Leah says, a safe harbor for expression without the pressures of the ballet world.
I'm very conscious of what my artistic director is thinking and where my ranking is in the company. And I think that affects who I am as a dancer, and I feel like being in this environment will help me shed it all.
No rule-bound restrictions here either.
As ballet dancers, we tend to think about our technique. If our performance quality is the best it can be, and that is really important, but sometimes you just need to be free and let it go.
This is a space where creativity runs rampant. Offstage, Jeffrey has balanced an already all-consuming life in dance with a fledgling career in choreography. His piece Fremd was on the bill for Boston Ballet's contemporary dance program in May.
I wanted something that wasn't very literal, but had a main character and could be about crossing a boundary.
His process begins with music and tends toward mashups. Fremd is a mix of electronic and Chopin. When he listens, the music becomes visceral and physical.
When you hear the violin, it just goes, and it cuts out. So it has that flow and then sharp. I like to translate those things throughout my movement. And sometimes it might not work, but I try to make it work.
I love his choreography because it is so musical. You can really see the music in his choreography.
This fall, Jeffrey departs Boston for New York, where he'll join American Ballet Theater. Leah remains one of Boston Ballet's leading lights. Together, as a collective, though, they dance on.
We're just gonna push as far as we possibly can. I don't know, it's gonna be something special, definitely. Something that people are gonna notice.
As the son of an African-American jazz musician and an English opera singer, performing is part of Clint Holmes' genes. Clint showed signs of stardom as early as kindergarten. His musical roots prepared him to take the stage by storm as a singer, songwriter, and a Las Vegas entertainer.
Night and day, you are the one. Only you beneath the moon or under the sun.
My name is Clint Holmes. I'm a singer, songwriter, and an entertainer. I think the first time I ever sang a song, I was in kindergarten. And for some reason, at the end of the day, I told the teacher I wanted to sing before the bell rang, and I sang Here Comes Peter Cottontail. And I don't know why I even remember this, but I do. And I sang it, and all the kids applauded, and that was that.
I'm a consummated man, just trying to snatch a little purity.
I come from a musical family. My mom and dad were both singers. My mom was a white British opera singer. My dad was a black American jazz singer. My mother was my first teacher in terms of the technique of singing. And I didn't want to hear it, of course, but she was my mother, so I had to. You know, she would go through the vocal exercises. Mom, 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 mom.
She love me, love me, love me, love me.
And then my dad taught me about the improvisational aspect of music. That music is felt. You know, music is something that at its best is felt.
Who do you think you're fooling?
Growing up, as I did in the 50s and 60s, as the child of a biracial marriage, which was not common then, there's always that battle to figure out where you fit, where you belong. And as soon as I figured out that music was where I belonged and where I fit and where people would stop asking me, quote unquote, what are you? And just go, wow, that was good. That's I think that was a large part of why I have done this my whole life, because it is a real part of who I am.
I've been loving and loving and loving. I'm exhausted from loving so well.
I started in Washington, D.C. I was in the United States Army Chorus. I was the first African American in the United States Army Chorus back in the 70s. And when I got out of the Army, I stayed in D.C., because that's where I was stationed, and started performing there. And in '74, I had my hit record medley, My Name is Michael, I Got a Nickel. That was my record in '74. And then I left for Los Angeles, and that's when I really started touring. I've done a lot, of course, here in Las Vegas. I've done a lot in Atlantic City. There was a period of time when I was performing in Monte Carlo, which was thrilling. I remember specifically a gala that I did, and in the audience was Prince Rainier, his son Prince Albert at the time, Frank Sinatra, Roger Moore, Sean Connery, Jane Seymour, on and on. I was so excited when I walked on stage, and right in the front was Frank Sinatra, and I looked around, and it was just like these faces of my life, you know, out there before me. And at the end of the show, the first person to stand was Sinatra, and then everyone else followed. And I mean, you know, when you talk about incredible moments, that was one that I'll never forget.
Oh woman, don't you treat me so mean. You're the meanest old woman that I've ever seen. But I guess if you say so, I have to pack my things and go.
When you're performing in Las Vegas, you have people from everywhere. I remember walking on stage in Harrah's and seeing a beautifully dressed couple sitting next to a guy in flip-flops and a wife beater, and thinking to myself, you're entertaining all of those people. You know, you're entertaining people who maybe have never sat in a showroom and seen a live show before. You know, and you're entertaining people who have seen everything. You know, so you really have to walk on stage in Las Vegas, you know, sure of what you're doing, and offer it to them. You know, so Las Vegas is a very interesting place to work.
I got a woman way over town. She's good to me.
My musical style has evolved. Right now, my interests go in two directions. One is theater, and the other is jazz.
She said it's really not my habit to intrude.
If you'd have asked me a decade ago, I would have said I'm a pop singer. I have found my jazz roots, which my father gave me when I was 12. You know, but as life goes and as careers go, you find yourself in the world you're in. And the world I was in was casinos and nightclubs where jazz was not, you know, what was wanted. But now that I've kind of, I'm in a place where I can, quote unquote, musically do what I want. And I find that's where my roots are still.
Just slip out the back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. You don't need to be coy, Roy. Just listen to me.
When I sing, I think I'm the most alive when I'm singing.
See the girl with the diamond ring. She knows how to shake that thing.
Even if I'm just rehearsing or in the studio or writing, I'm the most alive when I'm creating. I think that's what keeps me going. I think music is the highest form of art. I think that it's universal, the sound of music. So that's why we do it, and that's why we love to hear it, and that's why it means something to us in our lives.
Good night.
The Toytisserie is one of the exhibits at the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures in Kansas City, Missouri. It features numerous old, new, and vintage toys. Toytisserie features one of our nation's largest collections of antique toys on public display. So let's take a look.
We collected all the toys from the community, which we thought would be a great way to have the community provide an interactive element in the museum's kind of renovation process. We basically asked for toys that would fit into the palm of your hand. At the end, we ended up with 10 55-gallon barrels full of toys. So we collected all these toys, cleaned them, sorted them, and then Sarah went through and started to create scenes.
this Toytisserie is in the entrance of the museum and will greet all the visitors when they first arrive. And hopefully it will attract their attention to scamper upstairs and see the rest of the exhibits of the toys.
If you look on the Toytisserie, you'll see toys from all over. They're donated from people around Kansas City, and we've kind of tried to get a nice accumulation of toys to represent different genres of toys in different eras.
The concept is based on a giant barber's pole. You see outside old-fashioned barber's shops that turn around, around, around. And that is the concept behind this huge, just over 100-foot metal helix.
I think what's interesting to me about the Toytisserie is it's a little bit of a microcosm of the experience here in the museum. People love our collection because it's so approachable. You have tiny things, which are the miniatures, and then you have toys, which are things that you played with as a kid. So anybody can come in and find something that they connect with.
I like the way that children, they create their own worlds. So I remember as a child in my bedroom, I had rows of shelves, and I used to like arranging little groupings of objects, and I loved arranging them and creating scenes. So I was in preparation for this job many, many years ago. The process is you choose a toy and then drill in and attach a magnet. So very laborious. One had to pay attention 100% when working with each object. There's several different materials we're dealing with here. There's wood, there's plastic, there's ceramic, there's paper and card. And also there's the different ages of the toys that we're attaching. Some are old vintage and some are new. I think this is the most time-consuming thing I've ever worked on.
Toy manufacturers weren't really designing toys for us to put them up on this twisting sculpture. The inconsistencies in materials and knowing what tool to use is probably the biggest obstacle, but it's definitely something that we've overcome, and over time through the project we've kind of developed a rhythm where we could say, oh, this thing is a squishy toy animal, we probably shouldn't use the drill on this.
At first I was daunted by the scale of it. I mean, this is like a giant mural. I've never worked on something of this scale. And I do remember the first morning I walked in and was just surrounded by all these cardboard boxes and me. I just took a deep breath, like, okay, let's just start with this box. I think probably in just about every scene there's some little tiny detail that I love, and I think maybe there's quite a few little tiny details that people won't notice, or maybe will notice in time. I mean, like in the castle scene, just behind the Stegosaurus there's a little mouse hole, because every castle has a little mouse door. It's not complete without a mouse door and a little mouse poking his nose out, which, within the thousands of toys, that's kind of a crazy detail, and that's, I guess, me.
A lot of the toys we're trying to have directional movement, so one toy will be moving in a certain direction to kind of help with the flow of the sculpture. There's an interaction of toys wanting to check out other scenes, and so that's kind of a lot of fun.
It could always have more, but also it could maybe have less on there as well. So it's a fine balance of knowing when to stop. That's the hard thing, knowing when it's time to just step back. I am going to have to just make myself go, stop, okay, that's it. You just pull up the drawbridge and step away from the Toytisserie, so you can let go.
This has been a really cool opportunity to kind of pull back these memories, these toys. We're drilling holes in these memories, but we're also being able to play again as an adult, which is a really cool thing.
The Toytisserie just kind of encapsulates what we hope is the experience. You see stuff on it, you start to remember, it draws you upstairs, and you get to start to have a real, I guess you get to re-engage your childlike sense of wonder, which is something that we're all about here.
It's been really fun and has let me revisit my childhood. So I hope people enjoy it as much as I have.
To learn more about this unique place, visit toyandminiaturemuseum.org. Now, before we leave you, we have another Louisiana treasure for you. The old Antioch Baptist Church in Shreveport, Louisiana.
It's impossible to drive down Texas Avenue in Shreveport without noticing Antioch Baptist Church. The old red brick church, trimmed in white, stands out almost as though it were a magnificent castle. Dedicated in 1903, Antioch was designed by architect Nathaniel Sykes Allen. The Maryland native moved to Shreveport in 1870 after serving in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. The church features shapes that were common in early European designs, semicircular facades. Inside you'll find fan-shaped seating and a semicircular balcony facing the pulpit. Antioch Baptist Church was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1982. The church showed serious signs of age and disrepair at the beginning of this century. The 200-member church came up with the funding to restore it to its original charm in the year 2000 under the guidance of Reverend Webster Curtis West. Architect Nathaniel Allen is believed to have designed more than 300 buildings, all in Shreveport, including the Oddfellows Hall. However, the vast majority of his work has been lost to history. Fortunately, the Line Avenue School, the Logan Mansion, and the Slattery House are among the Allen buildings that are still standing.
What a magnificent church. So that's going to do it for this edition of Art Rocks. But remember, you can always watch episodes of Art Rocks at lpb.org/artrocks. And that's also a great place to find out about what's going on with the arts across the state. Until next time, remember, there are few things more relaxing and rewarding than enjoying great art, paintings, books, and/or performances. See you next time. I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.